You're listening to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm back with Gareth, the author of AI blogs we've transposed for the podcast. You heard him last week, really focusing on a fantastic blog really around the multifactorial learning organizationally that you can get from incidents. This week, we're focusing on learning from diving incidents around justice stories and indeed accountability. And we're going to unpack the blog with Gareth. Gareth, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for the invite back again. I mean, it's great to be able to share these ideas because it's the blogs are written about diving, but they're not about diving. They're about people in complex, messy systems like healthcare.
So really looking at this blog, Gareth, it was a fascinating read actually, and even just listening back to the AI piece, it was really fascinating because it really explores the need for improving learning and accountability, but like you said, within the diving community, but also the healthcare community, following adverse events, and just the themes of the holistic approach to incident response, but also visible learning and transparent communication of change. Could I get you to speak to those principles?
Yeah, so the blog was written about was based on three master's theses from Lund, and it was tied in with like last week's episode where we talked about this fatality of a young girl in the States. And invariably, when something goes wrong, people start to point fingers. They blame others for stuff that's going on, and so. I knew of the Mads Muller's one of the staff at Lund. He wrote his thesis about how do people deal with traumatic loss. My thesis was about storytelling to learn what happens underwater stays underwater, and Ruth Paris's was about accountability, a lived experience, and actually it was just tying all of those together, and the need from Mads's thesis when trauma happens, when we have a traumatic loss. People want to understand what's happened. There is this bit about we need to have some punishment, we need to have some learning, and there's potentially some blame or forgiveness that's there. And what Mads had identified was that trinity that exists. How we weight those different factors is based on our own needs and our own perceptions. And where blame really comes to the fore is if somebody believes that learning is not happening and it's not being demonstrated visibly. So an organization might learn following a loss, so a fatality, an accident or whatever. But if they're not demonstrating that loss and then something else similar happens, people sit there and go, hang on a minute, we've had this the last time. Why haven't you learned? And that was the sort of the frustrations in the diving industry that we had a very tragic case a number of years ago. And it's like, yes, we're going to learn. And we have something happen again, and people sit there going, what is going on? And so the next piece was my thesis to say, okay, so what stops that storytelling from happening? And there's a bunch of systemic factors and there's a bunch of individual factors in the diving industry. There's many barriers at the organizational level that prevents those stories. And invariably, it's about trying to protect the organization. And then the final piece is about accountability, because invariably people go, they need to be held accountable. And you sit there and go, well, what does accountability mean? And Ruth highlighted, there's 14 different sorts of accountability listed in her thesis, and that's not an exhaustive list. The areas that we're looking at are backwards looking, which is the blame focused type accountability. They should have done better. They should have followed the rules. They didn't follow the rules, so therefore they should be punished. Or we have mutual, peer, or forward looking accountability, where we tell a story. And Sidney Dekker talks about forward-looking accountability. It's not an easy way out, and that's really what the sort of restorative just culture model is about: is encouraging people, influencing people to tell their context-rich story and understand how would you make it different? How would you make it better? What were the factors, the conditions that made it easier to do the wrong thing and harder to do the right thing? So that the blog was really about a journey of learning from an event occurs, people blame and want to have something pointed. Okay, if we know that context-rich storytelling helps reduce that blame because now we understand the local rationality. And that also then feeds into the forward-looking accountability and telling a context-rich story is not easy. If you've been in that situation, and we've had a discussion on another podcast, it's not easy. And you sit there going, and we doubt ourselves. We should have tried better ourselves. It's like you made the best decisions you can with the resources and the knowledge and the time you've got available. People don't go to work to do a bad job. And if they do, that's not a safety issue. That's an HR issue that needs to be dealt with. So
Listen, fundamentally agree. You're just about to hear the blog. It is a fascinating and really insightful listen to everything, Gareth, you've just unpacked. And these context-rich narratives, like you said, are extremely important for institutional learning. Just finally, before we hear the blog, have you had any feedback really from the principals of the blog, or indeed the blog itself, that people have identified with, or indeed institutions have identified with? Because you're right, it's one thing identifying it, it's another thing enacting it at individual and in institutional level. Have you had any feedback at all?
so at the organizational level, I have almost zero contact. And part of that, I think, I asked the organizations to be part of my own research, my master's thesis research, and it was declined. And I understand why, because it's that bit of we don't want to get involved. I have had feedback from both Ruth and Mads, and they were both supportive of this, and I know them personally from Lund as well. And I've had people come back to me in the forums, send me direct messages, private message saying, thank you very much for grounding this, for taking it away from the blame in the individual to sit there and abstract up. And interestingly, I had somebody come back to me yesterday and said, are we actually learning anything from this thread? And I went, we very rarely learn from fatalities. And I said, I suppose, the way that I'm approaching this is because I've got a human factors system safety background. I know people who've died in aviation crashes. I have got an aviation background. I'm able to separate myself from the personal aspect of there are people who died. I get that. But what I'm doing is stepping out and focusing on the event and the system at a wider level and not getting into that. So I'm playing the ball, not the man. And that's one of the key bits of this is actually, yes, there are people involved. And one of the early things that I put in that first blog was the restorative just culture checklist. Who's been hurt? What do they need? Whose responsibility it is to provide that? And that can go straight away. You can enact that straight away. And that's not just the person who's physically been harmed, and that first victim we talk about, but also second victims, those who are in the here and the now doing stuff at that stage. And definitely in the healthcare space, pre-hospital healthcare space, there are lots of those people having to deal with trauma in the here and the now. And that sort of tags onto a frustration that I and a number of others have within the diving industry is it's my life, it's my risks to take. If I die diving, that's on me. And it's like, yeah, but somebody has to rescue, recover you out the water. They've got to do CPR. And if they then find that you've got a whole bunch of anticoagulants and you've bled out and you've gone diving anyway, that's going to really upset people. Because you sit there, you are taking what would be considered an unnecessary risk, and you're now causing trauma on me because of what I would consider your selfishness in that space.
So you're just about to hear the blog. What we'll do in the show notes is we'll put links to the blog and indeed to Gareth's work and indeed to contacting Gareth in both last week and this week's blog and in the show notes. So please do enjoy it. It's a fascinating piece. Gareth, as ever, thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Owen. Love it.
Have you ever been in that moment, right after something goes wrong? Could be anything, really. A dive that maybe went a bit sideways, a tricky project at work, even just a simple slip-up that has consequences.
Yeah, that feeling.
That knot in your stomach.
Yeah.
And all those questions flooding in. Why did this happen? Who's actually responsible here? Could we have seen it coming, prevented it?
They're such human questions, aren't they? Not just technical.
Exactly. We just crave understanding. We want to restore trust, feel like we can move forward safely. It's fundamental. So today, on the Dup Dive, that's our mission. We're exploring how we navigate that really critical space.
That space between the event and, well, what comes next.
Right. How we move from silence, maybe defensiveness, towards openness, and crucially, how we shift from just blaming someone to actually genuinely wanting to learn.
Because it's not just about stopping the next error, is it?
No, it's bigger. It's about building stronger, safer communities, whether that's in diving or, frankly, in any complex part of life.
And look, our discussion today, it's really anchored in some fantastic academic work. We're digging into 3 recent MSc theses from Lund University.
Right, proper research.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they offer a really practical kind of actionable way forward, especially for communities working in high-stakes areas, like diving, obviously.
So who are we drawing on?
Okay, so first, there's Miller's work from 2023. That explores how we find meaning through this powerful trio: justice, learning, and punishment.
Interesting mix.
Then there's Locke's thesis from 2024. That really unpacks why sharing stories, especially about things going wrong, is so difficult.
The silence problem.
Exactly. And finally, Paris's 2025 work. This gives us a vital perspective on accountability, what it actually feels like for the people carrying it.
And for you, our listener, why should you care? Well, the context might start with diving, but honestly, these human factors, these system issues, they're universal.
Totally. Human performance, learning from mistakes, building resilience.
Yeah. So this deep dive, it's kind of a shortcut to getting informed on these really critical ideas you can apply well beyond just diving. Okay, let's unpack Miller's insight first. This idea about meaning after a loss.
Right. It's not straightforward. Miller suggests we're often pulled between these 3 things: wanting justice, needing to see learning happen, and sometimes feeling a need for punishment.
A tug of war, almost.
Sort of. And the key thing is how each person weighs those elements. It's different for everyone. It's subjective. There's no single right way to find meaning.
So what's the first big takeaway from that?
Well, a critical practical point Miller makes is about learning. Learning is seen as absolutely essential. Why? Because it promises prevention.
Okay. It offers hope for the future.
Precisely. People, affected families, the community, they aren't just satisfied with an incident report saying this happened. They demand proof of learning.
Proof. Meaning what, exactly?
Visible, tangible changes. Things that actively reduce the chance of it happening again. Seeing that change happen is fundamental to how people make sense of loss. It's part of the healing.
That's a really powerful point. Visible change. But you mentioned something earlier. Individuals learn, not organizations.
That's a common failing, historically. People move on, projects end, and unless there's a really strong culture of storytelling and knowledge sharing,
the lessons get lost.
Yeah.
And we end up relearning the hard way.
Exactly. Which brings us to Miller's second big point. When that learning isn't there, or maybe it happens but isn't made visible, isn't credible.
What happens then?
The pressure for punishment goes up significantly. Justice, in this framework, can come through either visible learning or punishment. Which path feels right depends heavily on the context, the people involved, maybe even their cultural background.
Right. It's not static.
No, it evolves.
Yeah.
Our response needs to reflect that.
Okay, so let's bring this right down to diving. What does this mean for you listening now? Let's think about incident communication first. It's clearly not enough to just state the technical cause, the immediate trigger.
No, absolutely not.
The community needs the context. What were the underlying conditions, the pressures, the trade-offs, and crucially, what actions were taken afterwards?
Policy changes, training updates, maybe equipment checks, whatever it is.
Exactly, because when that learning is visible, it actually reduces the calls for punishment. Justice is sort of seen through the change itself.
And acknowledging the systemic stuff, not just blaming one person, that helps too.
Right, like your example.
Yeah.
Just telling instructors, follow the standards better without fixing maybe the underlying quality management system.
Yeah, that breeds distrust. It feels like a surface fix, ignoring the real problem.
So how do leaders, agencies, clubs actually make this proof of learning a habit? It sounds good, but how do you do it?
Transparency is key. Show what changed, who's responsible for making sure it sticks when it happened. That serves both justice and prevention.
I love that example you mentioned, the club that changed its award.
The wooden weight belt.
Yeah. Used to be for the biggest mistake.
Yeah, a bit of naming and shaming, perhaps even affectionately. But they flipped it.
To an award for the biggest learning opportunity shared.
Exactly. Such a simple, brilliant shift. It actively moves the culture from blame towards learning. It shows what the organization values.
It's amazing how small symbolic things can signal a big cultural change.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And thinking about community expectations, we just have to accept that different people will want different things after an incident.
Some will focus on sanctions.
Others will push for system fixes. Sometimes that's cultural. Often, you probably need a bit of both.
But the key is sanctions shouldn't be the default first step.
Right. You need clear, fair accountability, and you need that visible learning. Sanctions might be necessary, but not as the primary goal if genuine learning and change are happening.
Okay, so if visible learning and openness are so valuable, why is it often so damn hard to share the stories? Especially the near misses, the tricky lessons.
Ah, yeah. That's the puzzle Locke's research tackles. If sharing is so good for us, what stops us?
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does. And Locke found several systemic barriers kind of baked into the culture.
Like what?
Well, first off, fear and status. In diving, like many skilled activities, confidence is huge. It's social currency.
Your reputation matters.
Massively. So admitting an error, that feels like risking your status. And for instructors, it's even tougher. Their livelihood can depend on seeming infallible.
And you mentioned sometimes errors are even weaponized.
Sadly, yes. Commercially. Using incidents to subtly, or not so subtly, paint competitors as incompetent. That really shuts down sharing.
Grim. What else?
Liability, anxiety, that's a big one.
I should call the lawyer reflex.
Precisely. Lockdown comms. Now, there are valid legal reasons sometimes, protecting legal privilege for documents prepared because you anticipate litigation.
But the effect is?
It creates a really defensive posture, especially maybe in U.S. influence agency systems. And that defensiveness actively discourages sharing the rich, contextual stories we need for learning.
Makes sense. What about online culture?
Oh, yeah. Cultural norms online. Public forums can be brutal.
The pylons. Armchair experts.
Exactly. So people self-censor. They hold back. Or they share only partial, sanitized stories. Critical learning opportunities just vanish or stay hidden in small circles.
Okay. Fear, liability, online culture. Anything else?
A lack of structure. Without good, consistent ways to debrief, conversations can just become speculation. Hindsight bias takes over.
Should have known. Obvious mistake. That kind of thing.
Right. And formal investigations. Often they're laser focused on liability, who pays, which also means they miss the deeper insights into human factors.
Yeah.
System safety, why it made sense at the time.
Wow. Okay, that paints a pretty challenging picture. But you said there's good news too.
There is. Locke's research also shows what does work and why stories are so powerful.
Go on.
Stories are amazing at transferring tacit knowledge, that deep experiential know-how you can't easily write down in a manual.
Like intuition almost.
Right.
Or pattern recognition.
Kind of. Think about cave diving history. Safety improved dramatically when pioneers started sharing experiences, the war stories, in training.
Ah, they shared the why behind the rules.
Exactly. It cemented the reasons, the hard lessons learned, fatality rates dropped. Compare that to just a compliance mindset. Follow the rule because it's the rule. That doesn't build adaptability.
So rich stories change behavior better than just rules.
They absolutely can. Another crucial point. Second stories are way more powerful than first stories.
Okay, what's the difference?
First stories are usually the immediate account. What happened, who did what, often focused on the sharp end, maybe with some hindsight bias, single cause.
Right.
Second stories deliberately bring in multiple perspectives. The diver, sure, but also the buddy, the skipper, maybe the person who filled the cylinder, the dive center owner.
Forget the bigger picture.
Yes, to uncover those hidden influences. Fatigue, time pressure, equipment quirks, confusing procedures, communication breakdowns, all the contextual stuff.
The stuff that explains why it made sense to them at the time?
That's the key. Understanding the local rationality. It moves you away from judgment and towards genuine learning.
Okay, so what does this mean for you listening if you're a diver?
Well, maybe try sharing a near miss. In a safe space, obviously. A club night, a trusted group.
Focus on what?
Not just the outcome, but the cues you saw or missed, the decisions you made, the trade-offs. It helps build mental models for everyone. It's like creating a shared library of experiences.
And for instructors.
Model that vulnerability. Start a class, maybe with a quick story of your own close call. Include the context, what influenced you, what you learned, what you changed.
Show the process, not just perfection.
Exactly. Students learn so much from seeing how you think and adapt, and build in a regular debrief routine. Ask those key questions.
What made sense then? Cues seen or missed. Trade-offs. lucky or good?
Those questions are gold dust for digging into real learning.
And for the organizations, agencies, centers.
Teach the why of human error. Explain how context shapes performance. Provide protected channels for these stories, places where learning is the priority, not blame or liability.
And publish summaries.
Yes, contextualize summaries. Include the human and the technical factors. Acknowledge the messiness of real-world diving. Move beyond the myth of a single root cause.
Okay, that's powerful stuff on storytelling.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears slightly. Accountability.
Right. Another big word. We hear it all the time.
But Paris's thesis asks a really critical question. What does accountability actually feel like for the person on the receiving end?
Yeah, this is fascinating. Paris identified, I think, 14 different types of accountability in her research.
14, wow.
I know. But the really big insight is this. Some forms tend to make people feel threatened and isolated.
Which ones?
Typically, the ones that are very hierarchical, top-down, or purely outcome-focused, you messed up, here's the consequence, or only backwards-looking, focused just on blame for the past event.
And the result of those is?
Defensiveness, silence, people shut down, learning stops.
But there are other types.
Yes, forms like lateral accountability, where peers hold each other to account, or socializing accountability, where it's done in a way that maintains belonging, keeps the person in the group. These actually increase trust and open up conversation.
Interesting. And legitimacy matters too?
Hugely. If the process feels unfair, arbitrary, illegitimate, people resist. If it feels fair, relational, transparent, they're much more likely to engage, to speak up, to share what really happened.
So why is this so important for diving?
Because we often default to a very simple model. Who broke the rule? Find them, blame them.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
But diving isn't like following a recipe. It's dynamic. It's discretionary. Outcomes emerge from this complex mix of factors.
Training, local habits, gear, business pressures, how someone's feeling that day.
Exactly, all of it. So a purely backwards, individualized blame approach, it just misses all that richness, all that complexity.
Yeah.
And like we said, it blocks learning.
So again, let's make it practical. For divers, buddies, what does this mean?
Practice that lateral, that mutual accountability. Talk beforehand. Set clear expectations. Agree on how you'll check each other supportively, not like you're policing them.
And debrief afterwards.
Definitely. Reflect on the dive, how it went, what pressures were felt, what went well, what could be smoother next time. That makes teams genuinely safer.
Yeah.
It avoids just saying, well, won't do that again, without understanding why it happened.
And for instructors, dive senders.
Steer clear of the name and shame. Focus on forward-looking accountability. Okay, this happened. What are we going to change next time?
Changes to briefings, class sizes, site choices, maintenance schedules.
All of those. Look at the conditions that contributed, not just the individual actions. Are we setting people up for success, or does the plan rely on everything going perfectly?
And for the agencies, the bigger organizations.
Design accountability is a learning process, not just delivering a verdict. Transparent criteria for how things are reviewed, bringing in multiple perspectives, making space for context. That builds trust. And when people trust the process, they report more. It creates a positive feedback loop for safety.
Okay, let's try and pull these three threads together now. Meller, Locke, and Paris.
Right, so Meller tells us people need meaning. They balance justice, learning, punishment. And crucially, visible, credible learning acts as a form of justice. If it's missing, punishment fills the gap. That's vital for communication after an event.
Got it. Then Locke comes in.
Locke explains why we often fail to share the stories needed for that learning. Fear, liability, culture, they all suppress sharing. But she also shows how powerful structured, context-rich storytelling is for spreading know-how and actually changing behavior.
The paradox. We love hearing learning stories, but we're reluctant to tell them.
Precisely. And then Paris reframes accountability. It's not one thing. We have choices. Some types destroy trust in learning, others build it. We need to consciously choose the relational, legitimate, forward-looking kinds.
So when you put it all together, the message feels surprisingly simple, actually.
It kind of is, isn't it?
Less silence, less scapegoating, more honest, context-rich stories, combined with accountability that looks forward and aims to learn.
And the whole community gets safer, smarter, more resilient.
Yeah, and even just changing the language we use, moving from blame to curiosity, that feels like a really achievable first step, doesn't it?
Huge impact from a small change.
Okay, before we wrap this deep dive up, let's crystallize some really actionable steps. Things you can do starting today.
Good idea. Practical takeaways.
For divers, first, try telling one small near-miss story this month. Find a trusted circle, your buddies, your club.
And focus on the why, the cues, the decisions, the trade-offs, not just the scary bit.
You'll probably find others say, yeah, I've done something similar. It builds that collective wisdom we talked about.
It really does. What else?
Second, build that mutual accountability into your team dives. Agree beforehand. How will we cross-check? What are our roles? How will we debrief afterwards? Keep it curious, supportive.
Not judgmental. Team improvement.
And third, look for the proof of learning. When you read incident reports or hear about something, ask, what changed because of this? If you can't find an answer.
Learning probably didn't stick. Change is hard. Visible change is proof.
Okay, for instructors, what can they do?
First, model that vulnerability we discussed. Share your own close call sometimes, a quick 5-minute story. Include the context, the factors involved, what you changed.
Show your learning process.
Exactly. It's incredibly powerful for students. Second, when things do go a bit pear-shaped, design accountability looking forward.
Focus on improvement.
Yeah. Agree together. What will we change in planning, ratios, site choice for the next dive? Avoid getting stuck in just assigning fault for the last one. Focus on system improvements.
Makes sense. And finally, for training agencies and centers.
Okay, 3 things. First, publish context plus change briefs after significant events. Don't just say what happened. Detail what was altered. Checklists, training modules, kit stowage, whatever. Frame it as delivering justice through learning.
Visible learning again.
Always. Second, create those protected channels for stories. Closed, moderated spaces. Clear rules. No pile-ons. Focus on understanding what made sense at the time. You'll get more reports and better quality ones.
And third,
choose the right form of accountability. Actively shift away from purely top-down, backward-looking blame where possible. Move towards socializing, lateral, forward-looking approaches. And critically, publish your criteria. Make the process legitimate and fair.
So when something bad happens, that instinct, find the bad apple, file the report, let the lawyers handle it, move on.
It's strong. It feels neat, tidy.
But safety isn't improved by a tidy story and a quiet forum thread, is it?
No. Real improvement comes from engaging with the messiness. And if we connect all this to the bigger picture,
right.
Safety, performance, they improve when we get that people need meaning, not just facts, like Mellor showed.
Right.
They improve when we harness the power of stories to spread real-world lessons, like Locke highlighted. And they improve when accountability is fair, forward-looking, and designed to keep learning alive, as Paris explained so well.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to mull over.
Go for it.
What if we could really learn to ask why with compassion? Tell our stories with honesty, with integrity, and own accountability, ours and others, with courage, if we could do that.
We could actually turn these adverse events into fuel for learning.
Yeah. Move beyond just pointing fingers and saying, oh, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, we're all human. We're all fallible.
But our systems, our culture, they can always be improved.
We just need that curiosity, don't we? And the willingness to connect the dots. To see how normal work sometimes goes wrong and turn those everyday experiences, those near misses, into powerful shared lessons for everyone.
You're listening to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.